Welcome, everybody, to Extra Time Club and Country, driven by Continental. A historic moment, our first ever World Cup qualifying club and country for Canadian men's national team and U.S. men's national team. Yeah, Calen, I saw that get you a little interested. You like that little bit of history from the AT&T 5G virtual studios, and most importantly, from New York City, the greatest city in the world. Matt Doyle, Calen Carr, David Goss with you. Andrew Weavy is in Mexico right now, a.k.a. that's his number one team in Concacaf. It has officially been stated on this show that Andrew Weavy is number one an El Tri fan. We are, of course, coming to you after the U.S.'s 0-0 draw down in Central America, and Canada, of course, hosting Honduras. 1-1 draw for them, and we will get into all of that as well as preview Sunday's game coming up between the two in this octagonal, whatever it is we want to call it. Doyle, you got cats already in the video. Late night, ETR, club and country. Initial reaction coming out of this game. What was your first thought?
A point is fine. It's disappointing because I thought the U.S. created the 5 best chances of the game. Miles Robinson with the early header, and then Weston McKennie and Jordy Pefok in the second half both had looks that you would hope that they would bury. These are Champions League guys, and it was far from dominant from the U.S., and it was not free-flowing, but they basically didn't give up a single good look all night. They were never really that threatened, and they created enough to have gotten one. And it's disappointing that they didn't, but a point on the road to start qualifying. You're kind of greedy if you want, and to be fair, I did want more than that. But it's a fine way to start qualifying, even if it does leave you a little frustrated with some of the tactical and personnel decisions, which we will get into presently.
Calen, first reaction?
Yeah, we will dig into those. I mean, I think a point in the end is fine. Win at home. It does apply more pressure to this next match against Canada, which was already huge, but is now looking like, a must win. You got to win your home games, especially if you're going to just sort of hold serve on the road. And but I thought they did enough tonight to get a result. And it came down to looking for, look, we'll talk about it, and of course, but you're looking for that kind of one player to grab the moment. Christian Pulisic, not in the lineup. He's been the guy that we've been able to lean on even in the last qualifying cycle as our most experienced player in a lot of ways, and definitely our biggest attacking threat. So I thought we missed him quite a bit tonight. And then, but you go down on the road to El Salvador. A lot of people may have forgotten what it's like to watch teams play down there. Whether you're watching, whether it's an MLS play or whether you're watching the national team, especially in World Cup qualifiers, and all you had to do was watch the opening national anthem to see what you were in for the night. The crowd was fantastic, and you got to give El Salvador a ton of credit for getting a point at home. But it did leave you wanting more from the U.S. team. But I think in some ways the way the team was set up, it was almost as if they knew they were going in not with all of I wouldn't say that was anything close to our best 11 for the match, and maybe we're saving something for Canada.
Okay, so Calen, you look at that lineup, and this has been a big conversation already. What were you frustrated with? What were you happy about? What do you make of the way Greg Berhalter approached this first ever World Cup qualifier for him?
Well, I was surprised. I have to say I was surprised. Tim Ream was a big surprise for me to see in the starting lineup. I didn't think he had a great performance when he came in against Mexico and was trying to kind of hold serve or just kind of like hang on and gave up some opportunities. And especially when you saw that he was going to be essentially a cover for Sergiño Dest. But I have to give it up. He did a fantastic job. I thought him and Robinson did well as center backs. And at times you had to have Adams come over, and Dest is still an issue.
He was terrible. He was terrible, Calen. Just say
it. Well, for me, the two biggest questions coming into the cycle and still continuing is the number 9 and left back. The number 9 you can almost understand in some ways because it's a lot of young players, and Zardes is the one experienced guy, and he's not available. But then left back, you think is now Dest's position, and we've continually had to switch different center backs around who can play with him, who can cover for him, and it's a liability, and you're not getting enough from him going forward. Naive, I think, they were talking about in the post-game show, And, it's fine to have the tricks and flicks and all that. Clint Dempsey had it, but he also got up and was ready for the fight. And when he got kicked, he was willing to give it back. And just not seeing that even, which is bare minimum for U.S. men's national team when you go on the road to El Salvador.
So there is there's a margin here that you're willing to say, okay, it's his first road qualifier in Concacaf. He has almost zero experience in this region. He's just 21 years old. I don't think anybody expected him to come out here and play like Frankie Haydick did 12 years ago. But
how old is Tyler Adams? How old is Weston McKennie?
You're right. I mean, they're a couple of years older than him, but they're also different players, right? We have different expectations for them.
Sure.
And it's because of what we've seen from Serginho. Every coach Serginho Dest has ever had has benched him at one point or another for his inability to defend at a high level. And we saw that repeatedly tonight. Obviously, he got yanked at about the hour mark. If you go back and you watch that first hour, he's so constantly late to the challenge and completely reactive. He never, protects space. He never cuts off passes. That Tyler Adams had to shift out of that defensive midfield role and over to the left-hand side and babysit. Anytime Tyler Adams was more than 5 yards away from Serginho Dest, it was trouble for the U.S. And so with Adams having to shift that far out, it changed the structure of the entire U.S. midfield. At the point of the midfield for the U.S. was to press, because Adams is your 6, and then McKennie and Brendan Aronson, who's very energetic, but I still think completely miscast in the center of the pitch. They're your very energetic box-to-box number 8s. And the idea was to create the type of transition moments and verticality that Qatar did against El Salvador in the Gold Cup, because El Salvador wants to play. We said it in the pregame spaces. They're not going to bunker. They're going to come out there. They're going to try to get on the ball. They're going to try to play through midfield. And they did that tonight, and those moments were there. But we didn't. But because Tyler Adams was over at left back all game, sort of holding Serginho Dest's hand, we didn't have the numbers in central midfield to turn those moments into actually man up transition situations. So I think, and look, I'm ripping Serginho Dest here, but
really?
the issue to me it was Greg Berhalter being too cute and overthinking it. If he had just played George Bello or Anthony Robinson at left back, just keep it really simple at left back. Make sure that the midfield that you chose can do the job that you intend it to do. Then I think this looks like a different game from open play. And I would argue, actually, the last 25 minutes did look significantly different. The U.S. were much more dangerous. And part of that was Jordy Pefok, I thought, was an upgrade over Josh Sargent. But I think more of it just had to do with the balance of having Anthony Robinson providing width and verticality on the left side and not losing every single 50-50, not losing every single individual battle as Serginho Dest did. So even in spite of all of this, the U.S. created enough chances and should have finished one and should have come out of here with 3 points. So you can't be too frustrated. But I do have some real frustration with Berhalter for getting too cute with it. Serginho Dest shouldn't have been starting on left back, man. And Brendan Aronson, I understand the theory behind putting him in central midfield. He completed 5 passes in the first half. The reason he doesn't play central midfield for his club team anymore is because he never finds the ball. And against a team like El Salvador, if you have a central midfielder who's not finding the ball, then you're going to struggle to create any sort of rhythm and any sort of danger via possession. And so I feel like Greg Berhalter really overthought it, and he made it more difficult than it needed to be against a very well-coached and aesthetically pleasing team. And I'm not going to say that's why we didn't win, because we should have won anyway, but it could have been easier than it was.
Doyle, I agree with you. And I think when you look at, my question mark was Ream, but Ream has actually done the job. But the reason I had such big questions about it, especially, was because it was, could he cover for Dest? And when you go into a match like this and you're already saying, okay, well, this piece is a little bit broken here. How do we fix it with this guy here or Adams here? And how does that unbalance the team? And it'd be one thing if Dest was giving us everything going forward, but that's not happening right now. It's been match after match after match where he had the one shot where he kind of tucks in and kind of hits a tame one. It was one of our only shots, I believe,
which I
that
think
wasn't a header in the match.
And he scored in one of our first friendlies in the COVID time from a similar position.
Sure.
Where he came inside and hit an unreal shot.
That's why we knew as soon as he cut in like that, I'm like, oh, he's definitely shooting.
Mm-hmm.
He's definitely shooting.
But El Salvador was never going to be a good venue from what we've seen from him now, and especially now when you look to the matches ahead, you look towards that match in Honduras. I'm not sure that's a player you want to put in there.
So,
which is frustrating to say for a player of that quality.
Okay, so we've already talked about some of the starting lineup questions, some of the formation stuff. Let's go performances, though. We've hit Serginho Dest. There was other players on the field. While Calen, you mentioned this wasn't our best 11, or there wasn't the U.S. best 11. There were other players on the field with big expectations. I think Weston McKennie, one of them, Tyler Adams as well in midfield. What did you make of their performances?
For me, I mean, part of it was Tyler getting dragged a little bit around. He wasn't able to influence the match in the same ways that we've seen him in the past. Also, it should be said, this was his first 90 minutes with the U.S. men's national team in a while, but I still thought that we're used to seeing him, especially in a match like this, take the reins. Weston, I thought, had some good opportunities. Of course, he has the one header that are a couple headers where he was able to get up, and he's always a threat in those situations. And those two always kind of seemed up for it. I thought Reyna had a couple looks, so he had the kind of beautiful little lifted ball into Weston on the one, but none of them were able to find that moment. And it didn't seem like they were able to really connect with each other, and then also the other pieces around them. It just looked a little bit disjointed. Some of it you sort of tossed to the circumstance, but there were a lot of changes in the lineup, and I thought some of the selections were a part of that.
Yeah, I thought Reyna looked infinitely better over the final half hour with Robinson overlapping and just creating some width and verticality away from him. And Gio Reyna never plays his fullback on the overlap. He refuses to do it, but defenders don't really know that yet. They haven't seen that tendency. So it ended up giving him a little bit of space, and that's how he was able to get more into the game. And there was a time maybe around the 75th minute where I was like, Gio might get one, because he started to feel it a little bit. I think it's around that point where he gave Weston that little chip that Calen was talking about, that, for the header that I still can't believe Weston missed that one. But to the question you asked, David, I thought Adams is a godsend. His ability to cover for defensive lapses seemingly everywhere on the field is just, it's world class. He's literally world class at that. And his, ability to press, the fact that he can do both of those while still being positionally disciplined is, he's a hell of a player. For McKennie, it was, I think, not quite a tale of two halves. I think it was a tale of the first 60 minutes and the final 30. He was mostly, I thought, really good for about the first hour, and then the final 30 minutes sloppy, lacking. I don't know if it was burst, but he wasn't. He suddenly wasn't finding the ball as much, and that's a failing of his that goes back a couple of years. And I thought it was mostly hidden for the first hour, but then it came back. Elsewhere, Brennan Aronson miscast as a central midfielder. I just hope we never see him there again.
I think his first moment once the subs came on was an early ball played in from a good space on the right side. He immediately looked more comfortable.
Yeah.
The moment he came wide, and then he came inside, and him and Reyna almost linked up. He misread it a little. I think from playing out of position, he was a step slow or step off because he wasn't comfortable. But immediately you could see him be more effective out wide.
Yeah, and then, that goes back to my frustration with Berhalter.
So who would you have started?
I would have started Leggett.
Mm-hmm.
I actually would. I would have rested Tyler Adams this game. I would have started a central midfield of Acosta, Leggett, and McKennie.
But even after you just said Tyler Adams was a godsend?
Yeah, because Tyler Adams played 90 minutes or 85 minutes at the weekend and has now made two like very long flights and then just emptied his tank. And now we need him to be ready to go for the home game against Canada, which is kind of a must win against a much better team. Oh, against a better team. Like I'm not particularly happy with the way Berhalter rotated the squad. The guys at the Scuffed podcast talk about how he can get too cute or cute adjacent. And to me, he got really cute with the selections tonight, specifically Dest and Aronson, and being so convinced that this was this adjustment was the right way to blow up the El Salvador game plan. When it's like, don't worry so much about blowing up their game plan. Impose your game plan. Make the stuff that you've been working on for the past 2.5 years, make that the defining factor of how this game plays out. And, play the guys in their most natural positions. It's their first road qualifier in Concacaf. There's going to be a learning curve. And I think he kind of forgot about that. And I mean, to the point that Calen made at the top of the show, there wasn't a lot of Concacaf experience out there, but there could have been, right? George Bellows played a ton of games in Concacaf. Kellen Acosta's played a ton of games in Concacaf. Like, Sebastian Lletget hasn't played a ton, but he's played enough.
He did jam Reem and Yedlin into the team.
He did.
Yeah, and you assume is part that was a large part, if not the reason why.
Yeah.
I mean, I assume so. Yedlin did not cover himself in glory. I'll tell you what, the best fullback on the field today was Alex Robin. He was the man. He didn't play as a fullback, but like he was the man of the match today. He was awesome in this game, and I think Christian got pissed, which is why they got into that little shoulder charge there late in the second half. But like there was a comfort level in his play and in El Salvador's play that I think was lacking from some of these guys. And again, I have to go back to what I said. It's a fine result. It's a fine point. It's frustrating at the same time.
Calen, Anders has asked it in the chat. We've got a ton of it in the tweets. Coming into it, you're fine with 1 point, I think, right? So is there anything from the way this game played out that stands out as disappointing, or is it just you want them to win every game, and this is the first time we've done this in a while, but this is just the reality of CONCACAF?
It's definitely the reality of CONCACAF, and you go on the road, you fight, you try and get a set piece. Like those little small margins or opportunities are what separate teams, and the frustrating part was that they were there. It seemed like those opportunities were there to nick a goal, whether it was off the Robinson chance or whether Acosta had a good header late that the keeper made a play on. And it's like they had enough places. If you get one or two of those, maybe you say, okay, that's bad luck or you missed one. But it was about 3 or 4 of those where you think one of those would fall for you and you'd be able to kind of escape with 3 points. That's where I think some of the frustration sets in. But yeah, you have to keep a level head. I think 13 matches still to go. So 1 point on the road, you return home. I think the lineup we'll see in this next match is going to be very different. I expect a lot of changes between this match and on Sunday against Canada. And, I think part of the result will be colored by what it looks like on Sunday and what that result looks like for the U.S. team.
Because we're talking, I think we said 5 points would be a fine window, right? So if they're at 4 points on Sunday, it'll look pretty good. We'll talk about Canada. We'll talk about that game in a little bit. I think if
you offered me 5 points right now, in no injuries, I would take the hell out of that.
Well, they're already one game in. You could barely go better.
I think I took 7, but I was flying. But
I just wanted to be out there and not in a positive way. That I think last show I said 4 points. I wouldn't be, off a cliff and that upset.
You did say that.
So I can't adjust it now and complain, but you kind of have to. I had to keep reminding myself what this looks like. And in fairness, Mexico scored in the 90th minute. If not, every team drew today. That is what CONCACAF is. And I think we talked about it in the Twitter Spaces, Doyle, before the game, which we'll do before every game. So you can always log on there. I think teams are closer because less teams have a clear identity and have played enough times or in the right environments. I mean, Jamaica played a USL team, and no offense, Nick Murray, but that's not exactly what they wanted to put out there in World Cup qualifying. So I think we're still kind of far off from who these teams truly are.
I bet Nick is in the YouTube comments right now.
Guaranteed. He's everywhere at all times. I think from this game, for me, the one of the things I learned is Miles Robinson is a locked-in starter, right? Mm-hmm. At center back. He was phenomenal again today. He can run anyone down over the top. He can step in and win the ball. He's comfortable in possession as well. That's something that we didn't know 3 months ago. That alongside John Anthony Brooks, there's another locked-in center back now in the U.S. men's national team.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a very good summer in that regard. Getting, Robinson, I think knowing that Acosta can do what he did as a defensive midfielder, those are the two biggest positives from the summer. The hope is that by the next window, is that Chris Richards is healthy and has a few hundred minutes under his belt so that we can get him in as well, because he's the other obvious one. I think that, hopefully by the next window, it is Brooks, Robinson, and Richards who are getting the vast majority of the minutes at center back, because those are the three most talented guys. Robinson showed it tonight. But again, he's another one of those guys who has a lot of CONCACAF experience, and not just this summer in the Gold Cup, but because of that Atlanta United U.S. Open Cup dynasty, he's gotten to play in the CONCACAF Champions League year after year after year. And that matters. And that's why I was happy to see him out there. It's also why I wanted Bello out there, because he's played, I think, about a half dozen Champions League games now at this point. And I don't think they would have been overawed at all by the Cuscatlan. Hopefully that's, what is on tap for San Pedro Sula a week from now. But in between, there's that big home game.
All right, Calen, this one from Eli Sandoval Jr. on Twitter says, who lost their place in the starting 11 tonight?
Well,
I think we did about 10 minutes off the top, but can you really sit Serginho Dest?
Yes.
I think in this next match, you go with him again after everything I've said. I think in this next match, I think you're going to be at home. You're going to have more of the ball. You're going to be in a much better venue for him to play. And I think you potentially move him to the right side, though. I think he could go back to the right side.
You think?
where he's a lot more comfortable. And so I think I do think the number 9 position is still up for grabs. I think Ricardo Pepi may be the best striker in the pool, but the hard part is because he doesn't have he doesn't have a cap. It's very hard to just go with him from the start against Canada. Although I think he could do well. So I think then you're down to Sargent or Pefok. Who do you sort of rate in this situation? I think Greg will ultimately go with Sargent again, although I think Pefok would present different challenges that would potentially give Canada a difficult time. And we've also seen him be a little bit better around the net in his limited.
He actually impressed me defensively tonight. I thought the first half dozen games that he played for the U.S., he looked a little bit lost. And again, he's not a Sargent level defensive forward. Sargent's a very good pressing forward. Pefok's not quite that level, but he actually got into some lanes. He was very willing to use his size, and I thought he presented some real problems.
He won that ball off the center back.
He did. Yep.
That if Aronson reads or he makes a decent pass, which was kind of what it felt like the whole game. Yeah. Everything was a half pass off or a second too slow. That's break.
That's being on the road in CONCACAF World Cup qualifiers. There's very few pretty goals. But I to what Calen said, I think that Sargent still starts against Canada. But I would be happy to see Pefok come on. I mean, depending on the scoreline, to see Pefok come on in the 55th minute instead of the 65th.
And the reason why I brought up Pepi in this situation is we've talked so much about the number 9 position and all the different things as far as your pressure or what you're able to provide and hold up play or how you combine. But ultimately, it's about scoring goals. And of the 3, I think Pepi is the best finisher of the bunch. And if we have a much better, if Christian's back into the team and we have Reyna on the other side, it's really not about creating as much. I mean, yes, you can tuck back and hold up, and then they can run in behind. But at the same time, you ultimately need somebody to get into the box and finish off these chances and be a threat. And I think Pepe still has that. So I'd like to see him get into this next match. I don't think he'll start, but I'd like to see him be, one of the players that comes off the bench, and I could see him taking his chance.
Doyle wants to play Sargent and then P. Fox, so that Pepe then just goes back to Mexico.
Oh, stop!
This was all for naught, and this was all for nothing. It'll be interesting to see what happens, because for Canada, they got a 1-1 draw at home against Honduras. I think it was the first ever World Cup qualifier at BMO Field. Not 100% sure on that one. Could be wrong. But I think the entire last cycle they played in Vancouver for World Cup qualifying. Obviously, they've not been to this stage in this decade, century, whatever. Not even decade.
Not since 98.
Right. So century and millennium.
Yeah.
Those two I could use. Decade, correct, but it's been even longer than that. So this was a huge moment for them. About 15, 20,000 fans at BMO Field for this one. Canada coming out with, I think you can call it, the pickup soccer lineup that John Herdman went with, which was, all these guys look good. They're fun. Let's play all of them at the same time, even if it makes no sense. We got a lot of vicious tweets. I think here's one we could start on, Doyle, which is who's under more pressure if they struggle early in World Cup qualifying. John Herdman and Greg Berhalter. Hence where you can see where all of our fans are at right now. Take us into your early reaction to what you saw from Canada tonight.
I thought it was actually similar to Berhalter, and that was it was a little too cute. John Herdman went away from a lot of the stuff that had been working for Canada. And I mean, they played some great soccer during the Gold Cup and even before that, largely out of the 3-5-2. And they went to kind of a lopsided 4-4-2 in this game in order to get Alphonso Davies, Jonathan David, Kyle Larin, Tejan Buchanan, and Richie Larie. How do we say it? Lai. So that we used to call him Richie Larie. He corrected everyone on how you pronounce his name, which is, say it again, David.
Richie Lai.
Great name. So getting all those guys on the field at the same time, it's kind of like a FIFA move. Like just put your best players out there and roll out the ball and count up the stats. It doesn't work that way, and they were completely disjointed. Having only two guys in central midfield, so it was like an off-balance 4-4-2. Having only Eustachio and Atiba in central midfield. I mean, Eustachio's not – he doesn't cover a ton of ground, and Atiba's my age. He's just holding it down out there for Gen X. It ended up exposing.
Is he a UConn guy?
No, he's not. But a UConn guy did score. It ended up exposing the Canadian defense, and I thought it made a pretty mediocre attacking Honduras team look really actually quite dangerous in the first half. Second half, he made a sub. He brought on Junior Hoylett. Hoylett played actually kind of underneath Jonathan David and Kyle Larin, so he was more of a central midfielder. They won the midfield battle. They won the central midfield battle in the second half, and they really dictated the game. And they deserved a winner. And even though it's a home draw, which is frustrating, and if I was a Canada fan, I would be like, I would be on my fifth scotch instead of my first, just staring at it nothing.
First.
But the way they played in that second half, the physical and mental toughness that they showed to come back and really outplay Honduras and get the equalizer and carry the entire game, that's not something Canadian teams have shown in a long, long time. It's been like literally decades since Canadian teams have played like that in qualifying. And I know it's cold comfort because they just dropped, home points, and that is a nightmare way to start the hexagonal. But you have to trust. You have to trust the process at some point. And I thought the process was good once they got through that first 45 minutes of pickup soccer. Once they got through that and they put out, then they start to do more of what they have been doing and looking like the team that they had been and trusting that, they started. I was really impressed by that second half from Canada.
Yeah, Doyle, I think, it makes me wonder if they were thinking of, the added pressure of playing against the U.S. away the next match and trying to say, we have to go all out, guns blazing for the 3 points right now, because who knows what's going to happen in this next match. And we're starting, World Cup qualifiers and all that. But they lost a little bit of that identity. And when we watched them be so good in the past, it was because they would dominate the middle of midfield. They were tough to play against. And then they would get out on the break, and they have special players that are difference makers, whether it's Tejan going one-on-one in that beautiful goal against Mexico or whatever it is. You don't need 4 or 5 of those guys to do that. Right. So the balance was just off. And they need to have that sort of central tough spine that they've used in the past, and then be able to use their speed and athleticism and skill on the break. And that's when we've seen Canada really, really kind of hit. And it just seemed like that wasn't it for them. But look, I agree, for them to learn those hard lessons, oftentimes that can be 0 points. And I think when I look at the U.S. team and our performance too, you go through man for man. If you even ask all the guys in the locker room, I would say many of them would be honest and say it wasn't my best match personally. And how many times have you had that and you go down to El Salvador and you walk away with a loss and you get no points out of that as well too? So I think if you're a U.S. fan, a Canada fan, I know many are going to be upset in both cases with just kind of the expectations, but you've learned some hard lessons potentially, but not necessarily costly ones.
Yeah, it's frustrating that, as you guys talked about, like Canada wanting to come out with this bright start, that John Herdman didn't see the things that have worked and said, that's how I do it. Mm-hmm. They've arguably had the best central midfield in the region over the last year. He's put that together. That's credit to him. And his solution wasn't, well, I'm just going to play what's really good with the best left wing back on the planet, one of the best or 2 forwards in the region, and I'll just set them up using Oso or Kay or Hollett, whoever it was, alongside these 2 guys. I mean, you could play Eustachio ahead of Kay and Atiba Hutchinson.
Yep. And
you would have – Alphonso Davies couldn't get the ball. So it doesn't matter how good he is if he can't get touches on the ball. And when he did, he was dangerous. Now, I will say, not in Herdman's favor, but the way this whole thing works out, Jonathan David had a chance to square a ball to Tejan Buchanan for a tap-in, and Alphonso Davies had 2 chances he got to the end line and didn't put in dangerous crosses or pullbacks that could have been goals. They could have been up 1-0 or tied 1-1 at halftime. So it falls on the players alongside that, which I think we're talking about with both teams.
Absolutely.
Right? It is disappointing performances, but also coming out of disappointing decisions by the managers, which maybe affected the players or whatever it was going into it.
I definitely think it affects the players. I've talked to enough players over the year. I'm sure, Calen.
I wish we could talk to a
if you guys went into the playoffs and Dom was like, oh, actually, we're going to play a 4-3-3. We're going to be a heavy possession. We've been playing a 4-4-2 diamond all year, and devastating counterattacking team. We're going to be a 4-3-3. Go out and do you'll be like, what the hell is happening? It doesn't matter if you play well.
No, we played a 4-3-3
for that 1 year.
Dominated possession. Come on. We don't need to go relitigate this.
Dom ball, baby. That's what the post-game show is for.
No, but you undercut everything that you've been trying to build. And I do think that both Berhalter and Herdman did that to an extent tonight. And at the same time, given the chances the teams generated, that they should have won anyway. They really should have. So it does fall on the coach, but it falls on the players too, man. If you're a Champions League forward and you get a chance to give your teammate a tap in, you're $30 million forward. You give them the tap in, man. And if you're a Champions League forward and you get an open header from 6 yards out, at least put it on frame. Yeah, and that's the story for Jonathan David. Is a story for Jordy Pefok, and that. That is why both of these teams walked away tonight with only 1 point each.
So because you guys, I think, both kind of settled a little bit more positive on the Canada result than I did, which is this is a bad tie. for them. And I think they're still in a place
You're completely panicking.
No, but I think they're still in a place where, listen, every person I know who was at the game after the game was negative. Yeah. And I think they're still in a place where they have to win the fan base back. They have to win the general population back, which I think is why Herdman played this team. I think he wanted to go out on TSN and put up 4 early and say, look, this is what we do. Come join the ranks. This is fun. We're excited.
You don't think their performances this summer convinced people?
I don't know. I think the World Cup qualifying was huge to get to this stage, but it was done in an empty Bridgeview Stadium. So people weren't there, and it wasn't on national television in Canada. So I don't know how many people watched it. And then I think at the Gold Cup, they were good. But and this could just be the way we did it. This isn't their best team, and this isn't a full Gold Cup. I think reaction over the course of the tournament and the Mexico performance was phenomenal for Canada. But I think there's still that part, which is you've been burned for 30 plus years.
Sure.
You had to do something big. And so that's where I think this is frustrating. On top of the fact that you have no Alberto Elise, Lopez gets hurt on the penalty kick. This was a Honduras team that you could get after and get an opportunity out of. And so, I mean, you watch in the second half, at one point, ball gets loose and Alphonso Davies in a foot race with Minor Figueroa. Like, you got opportunities like that. You should bring home 3 points. I am not panicking. Because, again, I think this is a situation where teams are going to steal points on the road and they're going to win games you don't expect. And you're going to drop points at home because I think everyone is very even. But it does also set us up for what they need to do next. So USA plays Canada on Sunday. We're going to do a pregame Twitter Spaces on Matt Doyle's feed as I stall to figure out what time the game will be at.
It's at 8.
And it is at 8 p.m.?
Yes.
8 p.m. Eastern time.
8 p.m. Eastern time. It looks like it's on FS1, Unimas, and To The End.
Boom. Nissan Stadium. So an MLS venue, MLS home game is what we'd call it, for the U.S. and Canada. Obviously, this is a huge moment for us because we cover a league that is attempting to build the game in both these countries, and they are both here in a big moment playing against each other. There'll be quite a lot of MLS players, especially a ton of former MLS players on the field. What do you guys want to see? Let's just go general to start, and then I can zero you guys in as I need to. Doyle, you want to start? What do you want to see different from either side or both sides going into Sunday?
I would just like to see both coaches go back to what worked so well for them this summer. And with Berhalter, that probably does mean more of a traditional 4-3-3 that's less geared towards pure transition, is maybe trying to get on the ball a little bit more and construct plays. So I would assume, Brendan Aronson out of central midfield and some combination of Leggett, Acosta, Adams, and McKennie, depending on who you want to have fresh for the Honduras game. Definitely play a left back at left back. I do think we're going to see Serginho Dest at right back. I would say the best game Serginho Dest has played for the U.S. national team came when he was matched up against Alphonso Davies back in the Nations League in 2020 or 2019 rather. He was great on both sides of the ball in that game, but especially defensively. So I would hope that he starts at right back because I want to see if he can earn that. And then the front line, I mean, I'm still convinced from a U.S. perspective that the best way to rattle Canada is to pressure their center backs. And I still think that Josh Sargent does that better than Jordi Pifak or Ricardo Pepi. And with Christian Pulisic hopefully back, then I think those turnovers end up being a bit more dangerous than they were against El Salvador.
And you think Reyna starts again?
I do. Yeah, I think Reyna starts all 3 games. I actually think that Reyna is going to end up being kind of indestructible. What I will say that one of the things I don't want to see, and Greg Berhalter's talked about this, there's a propensity around the world of soccer right now for mirroring, like formational mirroring. Mm-hmm. So if you're going against a 3-4-3 team, then you play a 3-4-3. If you're going against a 3-5-2 team, you play a 3-5-2. And I'm guessing he expects Canada to go back to a 3-5-2 in this one. I don't want to see that influence Greg Berhalter's thinking. I want him to put his team out to play their game, and the same thing goes for John Herdman.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think both teams getting back to what they do best, and I think, to combat that Canada midfield, I would like to see Acosta, McKinney, and Adams just like win the midfield right there. You can play Dest on the right. You've got Miles Robinson to protect him in those moments, allow him the freedom to get forward on his right side. I think it'll look a lot better. And you have John Anthony Brooks come back in the team with Anthony Robinson on the left-hand side, with who's maybe a little bit more honest. And at times it might actually look a little bit more like a 3-back in times when Dest is getting ahead. And then up top, you got Pulisic, hopefully, fingers crossed, Reyna, and I think Sargent as well goes from the start. But like I mentioned, I'd really like to see Pepe get an opportunity as kind of an X factor off the bench at some point.
Okay, so you guys have walked through your teams. I assume this is a must-win game for the U.S.?
There's still, after this game, there's still 12 left in the Ocho. So we're not at must-win.
You have to approach it like a must-win.
Yeah.
You approach it that way. You've got a long ways to go, but if you get whatever you want to call it, lackluster, disjointed, whatever word you want to choose for, solid point on the road, whatever it might be, I think it's going to be colored by the result you get at home. And I think if you need to approach, if it goes the other way and it's a draw against Canada or even a loss, there's going to be some bigger questions. And for a young group that doesn't have that experience, I think it's a really important match for the team psyche. And generally, when we've seen this team in tough positions like this, or not even tough positions, but just being asked some of these questions, they've found a way to respond. So I feel pretty confident if you're a U.S. men's national team fan, looking to Sunday, that especially if you get Christian back, and I do think that is a big topic, like everyone's obviously going to be talking about it, but I don't think it can be understated enough. It's an obvious point, but I think I'm still feeling pretty confident for the U.S. team to get the results, all 3 points at home.
This is one of the most unfair things we've ever done on this show, but it was tweeted through. Matt Doyle, September 22nd, 2020, his USMNT hypothetical World Cup qualifier at left back, he had Serginho Dest.
Wow.
I
had Matt Turner.
You did have Matt Turner
at goalkeeper. So I'm batting 500. That puts me in the Hall of Fame, buddy.
Yeah, for sure. All right.
You took that well.
Yeah. Thank you, Derek Jeter. Or I think you're a Red Sox fan. I don't even know.
No, I just hate the Yankees. I don't have a favorite team.
Cool. That's fine.
That's very
unfortunately,
on-brand.
Jordan Morris was in his team as well, which sucks, but apparently doing better, which is great. We talked through the U.S. a little bit. You guys talked about your changes. It sounds like, and I assume this is how you feel, if Pulisic is 45 to 60 minutes fit, you start him, right?
Yes. Yeah. I think so. I genuinely think so. I know there's an argument to rest him and bring him in for the final 35 minutes against what would be a tired Canada back line. But I mean, he's the best player on the team, and it's not a must win, but it's kind of a must win. So you want your best player out there. So I think that you start him, even if you know you're going to have to sub him at the hour mark.
Plus, you may likely have Aronson go to the bench in this one, and as a change of pace in the winger position, where I think we all agree is best suited to right now with this U.S. men's national team. I think that would be the string you pull off the bench.
Just, do you have an idea of like how many minutes disqualifies you from starting for Honduras? Like, is there any hard
really good
line
question
with these players?
So, it's a really good question, and it's why I'm still a little miffed that Adams started and went the full 90. It just doesn't seem prudent because he came off 85 minutes at the weekend, played 90, and like crap, we might need him for 180 more minutes over the next 6 days. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is to that, but hopefully, from a U.S. perspective, hopefully you get 3 points. And so maybe you could say, all right, we're going to rest Tyler and we trust Calen to play from the start in Honduras. And this applies to John Herdman as well, because he could roll out Alphonso Davies and, Jonathan David and Kyle Larin and Eustachio in this game and say, we have to put our best team out there because this is one of our hardest games on the road at the U.S., in theory anyway, on the road at the U.S. Points here would be amazing. But if you do that, you lower the chance of actually getting all 3 points at home against El Salvador next Wednesday, which is a far more important game to get 3 points from. So both coaches have to really figure some stuff out in terms of squad rotation for this game. And I do think that both coaches put themselves in a somewhat difficult position going into it.
We talked a lot about seeing these rotated teams, and now because the other player I'm thinking about is Miles Robinson, where maybe Brooks and Zimmerman are a pairing, right? And Miles is a pairing with everyone, and so maybe he doesn't get the start against Canada and he comes back in against Honduras. But it felt like both of these coaches played all their best players they could in the first game off the start. And now, do you have space to operate? Do you have space to switch? It would be shocking to me if Atiba Hutchinson started on Sunday.
No, it'll be he's the one who I'm sure is not going to start, right? Because it'll be Mark Anthony Kaye and I think Jonathan Osorio in central midfield, and then maybe Eustachio gets another start. I think it's more likely Sam Piette.
Yeah, I think Piette's to me, this is the game Piette plays if he's
right. If you have Piette, Osorio, and Mark Anthony, that's still a really good central midfield. I think this is kind of a no-brainer for John Herdman.
So you'd assume Steven Vittoria as well, one of the older players on the team, doesn't get a start again.
I would hope not if I'm a Canada fan. No, I mean not that he's bad, but he's so much more important for them against El Salvador, especially because his weakness, which is his complete lack of athleticism, is less of a weakness against El Salvador than it potentially is against the U.S. So don't ask him to be the hero for all 3 games. Calen, how you doing, buddy?
Calen, you get delivery?
Just had to little plug-in situation.
Oh, an empty charge.
Studios. Yeah,
so now we know Calen's minutes limit. Just to be fully clear, let's get the data in. Let's crunch that data. So it seems like Scott Kennedy will probably come into the team.
I would
got
imagine.
Alistair Johnson, obviously. Kamal Miller didn't play great in this game. He also didn't look super comfortable when he walked off the field as a sub. And it was kind of late to sub a center back as well. So that's something I'm watching for if he's even healthy and available. For Canada, I said it was a disappointing result, but El Salvador at home, game 3 is a must win. Right? 100%.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So if you're John Herdman now, you have to be, that's the game you're keying in on, right? That's the focus, Calen, over the next week is get 3 against El Salvador, and that would leave you on 4 coming out of the first round. And then you want to get a result in the U.S., but all of the focus has to be on that third game, right?
I think that they have to bank on them winning that game just based on...
Oh, it doesn't even matter what you do.
Yeah, I think they have to bank on that because I don't think any team is at a point where they can look past a single match or say that the points in this next match don't matter as much, especially if you feel like you've left points on the table to begin with. And that's where these issues begin to compound and go, where you say, okay, well, we dropped points at home in the first match and then we kind of rested guys or we didn't put everything into the U.S. match and now it's all on this next one. That's not a position you want to get into. And I think that this Canada team, after their performance, yeah, you can say it was in the Gold Cup where there wasn't everybody there. But when they went against the first choice Mexico, and when they've gone against the U.S. team in the past, I think that they'll be coming down to play at Nashville and thinking there are points for them. Now, I think they'd be happy. I think they'd be happy with the point, and wouldn't mind taking. I think they have the quality to take away 3. There's no doubt about that. But I don't think you can wait looking past any single match. The squad rotation stuff becomes a little bit tricky, but I think the pieces that they were missing are actually more of the players that were rested and the ones that should be able to step into the team. And for the U.S. team, I feel a little bit the same way. For me, Acosta is a guy that I would take in as a first choice in the 11 right now with the way he's been playing this summer, and Brooks as well too. And I'm looking forward to seeing how the two of them, especially in the middle of the pitch, do. I could see Zimmerman getting a look. It's in Nashville. He's back healthy. He's fit. But I think it will be Brooks and Robinson, which is a center back pairing that I think that U.S. men's national team fans have been wanting to see.
And it wouldn't be shocking if Miles Robinson was fit to play these 3 games. It also wouldn't be shocking if Carlos Bocanegra was on the phone with Greg Berhalter right after, because they've already complained about other stuff going on with the national team, and that's fair. It's a fair complaint. Also, I've said Zimmerman and Brooks to me is a natural pairing, whether or not it's what you want to do. With Canada, as you said, though, Calen, it's interesting. They're not going to be intimidated, right? No. They've clearly shown they can play with the U.S., they can play with Mexico. 80% of the guys on the roster have played in this stadium before. Some of them, like Alistair Johnson, as a home player. So that they're going to be comfortable in this moment. I think there's a ton of belief in this team from everything you've heard out of Davies and Atiba and Jonathan David and all of them and Richie. They feel fairly comfortable in their position and where they are. It just took them 45 minutes in that first game to kind of get there. And you also get the whoa, we're finally in front of our crowd. How fun is this? And it was fun to watch, not to be there. But it would be nice, I think, for them to get 3 points.
But also when you look at the history of this team and this inability when it comes down to World Cup qualifying and that history that's behind them, this group, you talk to any one of them, they don't want to wait till 2026 to just automatically qualify.
I saw that tweet within 10 minutes of the game starting. I saw at least we auto qualify in 2026 tweet.
That's toxic. That's sad. Come on, guys. But yeah, no, so I think this match on Sunday for them is about kind of taking that next step, or taking that to prove that. So I think for them, there's no chance that they're going to be looking anything past the U.S., and then you'll figure out El Salvador at home when that comes.
So we'll have pregame Twitter Spaces for that game, breaking down both lineups. We're very excited for this one. We'll have postgame show here on Extra Time, driven Club and Country, driven by Continental on Sunday, and then again, of course, coming up for the U.S. going to Honduras next week, and for Canada coming home and playing El Salvador. So we'll have all your coverage on that one. Is there anything we didn't hit that you guys feel very strongly about that we didn't get out there?
I mean, just a reminder from all of this, there were 4 games in Concacaf tonight. There was only one winner. There were 2.
And that was like a 90.
There was a 90th minute goal. It was a very nice goal from Henry Martin to give Mexico a skin of their teeth home win against their Jamaica team that was missing
12 players.
Missing 12 players because of the travel ban imposed by.
But just
Premier
guys
League.
Like Mikel Antonio and Leon.
Yeah,
Bailey, not like big players.
So this is what qualified. Like Costa Rica and Panama scrapped to a scoreless draw. The U.S. and El Salvador scrapped to a scoreless draw. Canada and Honduras scrapped to a 1-1 draw. Mexico, who I even though the U.S. won 2 trophies this summer, I still think Mexico's the best team in the region. Needed a 90th minute winner against a weakened Jamaica. This is World Cup qualifying. This is why I was saying last week that while I'm amped and I'm looking forward to it, I'm deeply miserable about the whole process, because it's just not fun to watch. It's like the worst games until they qualify, and then it becomes wonderful, and you look back with nothing but fondness.
Calen, you put on a button down, so you've earned this. What do you want to close the show on?
No, I'd say there's beauty in the misery, Doyle. It's as a lover of the dark arts, and we didn't even see that much of it tonight. We didn't about no VAR and all that. The atmosphere was brilliant, and it was but it didn't quite turn over to that full scale, CONCACAF reality that we've come to know. So I think this match Sunday, obviously, I'm super excited about. And Doyle, don't be so negative, man. Come on. We're going to be all right.
If it makes you feel better, one of our producers, Thomas Formoso, who's Italian, I think they tied Bulgaria today. So he tells us all World Cup qualifying is miserable, but I'm pretty sure no one cares about anything outside of CONCACAF. It was fun to be back. It was fun, I guess, in quotation marks, to watch all the World Cup qualifying go down. So, of course, a full slate of games for MLS coming up Friday night. Actually, 4 games, and then Saturday night, a chunk of games as well. We'll be back on Sunday. We will have that pregame Twitter Spaces, our live postgame show. We will wrap that in with a MLS recap, and we will put that out as our podcast going into Monday, which is Labor Day. Also, Rosh Hashanah is coming up, so Shana Tova to anyone who does that whole thing. If you're sweaty like me, then you're one of those people. If you're not, then enjoy the rest of your week. And we'll be back right after the game on Sunday, so make sure to tune in for that one. Thank you guys for joining me. Andrew Wiebe, the #1 Mexico fan in ETR history. Enjoy the rest of your vacation, and have a great night, everyone.